Welcome back to the 8th video in a series in which I'm recording myself as I learn Python programming and the associated technologies. In this video, I'm going to install the Microsoft Visual Studio Code programming editor. I think we've gotten to the point now where I need a more advanced editor. And I'm also going to show how to add the Python extension to that editor so we get some additional features to help with Python programming and to use the editor with the Git version control system. I'm fairly familiar with VS Code, but there's a lot to this editor that I've never used before because in the past I've used it just to create documentation in the Markdown format. And now that I'm using it for programming, I'm sure I'm going to use a lot more features. So let's install the VS Code editor. The VS Code documentation is very simple and it tells us exactly how to install VS Code. Just use the snap command in Ubuntu. You can also install it from the Ubuntu software store. Let's launch VS Code. In the description of this video, I point to a couple of links to some really short videos that should introduce you to the very basics of using VS Code. I also point to other links that give you a lot more details. One of those links is a 1 hour long video that should show you everything you need to know about using VS Code. The first thing I want to do, since I'm going to be programming with Python, is to install the VS Code Python extension. It's already there as one of the most popular extensions recommended. And you can see it's the Python extension created by Microsoft. So I will install that. Visual Studio Code has support for Git built in. This little icon on the side is the source control icon. I should see here that it's already ready to start working with a folder. I can just open a folder from here, or really I'll just open it from here. So the top icon is the Explorer, and here you can open folders and files. I'm going to open a folder. I'm going to open the user mapper folder. Say OK. There, now there's all the files in the folder. And the interesting thing about this is that the version control should automatically be engaged. Yes, there you can see I've clicked on the version control and it already knows I'm on the add config file branch in my Git repository. That's because when I opened my folder, VS Code looked for that .git folder that's inside my project folder, which means that I've already initialized a Git repository in this folder. VS Code read all that information, and now it knows where I am with Git. So at this point, I'm going to be working with the mapperdata.py file, so I'll open that file. Here is the get user passwords function that we created last evening, or actually several evenings ago. It's been a while since I've been working on this. And now I need to create some new functions. Before I get started coding, I just want to select the Python interpreter that VS Code is going to use. The VS Code Python extension has some helper functions built into it that make it more convenient to work with Python, but you need to select which interpreter to use. And that should seem simple, but since we're using virtual environments, we want Python to select the virtual environment that I set up for this project. So I can either select on that little warning down there, or I can type Shift-Control-P to get the command palette, and I can search for Python select interpreter. So it doesn't matter which one you click on. I'm in the user mapper folder, so I'm looking for a version of Python here that's in the current folder. There it is, .env/bin/python. That's the Python that goes along with my virtual environment, which I named env. So if I select that, I believe I've activated my virtual environment. I'll install that selection. Now, for example, I can run one of these Python files directly from the Explorer. I can run mapperdata.py by right-clicking on it and telling it to run Python file in terminal. And there you can see it ran the file, which basically just prints out the random passwords that are based on the configuration file it read in. So that's a really convenient way for me using VS Code from now on to run these Python programs to test them. I'm also showcasing for the first time here the terminal that's built into VS Code. I don't need to open up the Linux terminal window anymore. I can consistently work all in VS Code. I can toggle this terminal on and off with the Control-tilde key combination. I can make it sort of full screen when I need to, and back to normal size. I can also open up more terminals. Here, for example, I just have one terminal open. I can click here and open up another terminal, and then I can page between them here. It's been a few days since I last looked at this code, so I should refresh my memory about what's in the configuration.yaml file, and also about what I'm expecting the data structure that mapperdata.py should generate looks like. There's my config.yaml file, and I can actually open that up on the side like that. Oops, and of course kill that over there. So now I've got a split screen, and I cannot look at an old version of the mapperdata.py file right now. Since I'm using version control, I can go back and look at old versions of this file. VS Code has some really nice integrations with the Git version control system. One of them is the timeline function down here. If you click on that, you can see all of the commits associated with the file that's currently selected in the editor. And I don't think I need the terminal right now, so I'm going to close that. Now this top one here is the most recent commit, and that's where I deleted all the old code and inserted this code here. And then this first commit here is the first version of the file before I made all those changes. The only thing that's changed in here is a few IP addresses. VS Code will actually let me run this old version of the program in a terminal. And one way to do that is to click on this little play button up here and to run the Python file in the terminal. Let's see what happens when I do that. I've never done this before. Okay, what's happening here is it's just running the most recent version. It's not running this code that I actually see here in front of me. I shouldn't have really expected all that magic to work out for me. So I'll just close this file. Because I'm working in a new branch, the add config file branch, all my changes are in this branch. The main branch still has the old version of this file. So if I check out to the main branch, I should be able to then run the file, have a look at the output, maybe just save that to a text file, which I can use as reference for the rest of my work today. So when I want to go to the main branch, I just click on the little Git status icon down here where it shows me the branch I'm currently at. Click on that, and that should show me a set of branches I can check out to. So I want to go back to master. And there I can see mapperdata.py is now the old version. If I run it, and I can run it again using this little icon here, or I can just right click on it and say run Python file in terminal. I'll just run it here. There is the data structure. So what I'm going to do is capture all that. I'll just create a new file. And there's my data structure. I'm not going to save that right now. I'm going to go back to the add config file branch, and now I'm going to save this file. There, now I'm back to operating in the add config file branch, so all my changes are going to be in the right place. And I have an example file, which I will put over here. Split that vertically, and that gives me my reference data on the right, the code I'm working with on the left. I don't need the terminal anymore, and I can close this menu bar. That looks good enough to work with. Now I'm going to start editing the mapperdata.py file. I'm going to add some more test code to this file. And the first thing I want to do is print out the dictionary that's generated when I read the config.yaml file. If I save that and just run it in the terminal, let's see what I get. I get my list of passwords from the first bit of test code, and then I get this section here where it prints out the dictionary that's generated from reading the configuration file. It might be a waste of time, but I would like the test code for the passwords to just be a little bit more compact. So I'm going to go up and change a little bit of that. Instead of printing everything on a separate line, I'm going to try to gather everything up for every user type and just print a set of passwords. If there's 10 users, then there would be 10 passwords, for example. And I'll make these variables a little bit more descriptive. There, and I'm just going to add everything to this output string and then print the output string at the end of the loop. One thing I've seen some people doing in some example code I've been looking at is when they're just going to iterate through a bunch of objects and they're not really pulling the key out or using it for anything when they're going through all of these key value pairs, they use, instead of a letter like X or Y, they just use the underscore as the variable that they're iterating with. And I think that's valid. At least that's what I've seen. And what that means is that you don't have to go looking for whether or not that variable is used anywhere. This is probably full of errors, but let's try this out. There's an extra parenthesis in there. I didn't delete that when I was changing things around. That worked. So I have 2 trainers and it's generated a random password for each trainer, and I have 10 students and it's generated a random password for each student. This lets me verify that my password generation function is still working. And then down here is just that raw input. It's pulled in from the YAML file, and that's just to help me debug any issues in the future. I probably won't keep that code in the long term. Now the next thing I need to do is get the devices. In the YAML file, I have 2 dictionaries. I have a users dictionary and I have a devices dictionary. The key, users, points to an object, which is a dictionary of key value pairs, which contains 2 user types, trainers and students. Same thing down here. The key devices points to a dictionary that contains key value pairs of device types, of which one is servers and one is routers. And then, of course, servers points to another dictionary of key value pairs, and so on. These are nested dictionaries, as we've seen multiple times before. So just for testing, just to build this up one piece at a time, because I know I need to have my devices dictionary created first, I'm just going to print out what the devices dictionary is. And I'll need to create a new function to do this, and I'm going to call it getDevices. And as an input to that, I'm going to input the dictionary that's generated when I read the configuration file. That's the dictionary pointed to by the configuration variable. I printed the whole thing down here, and I'm going to use it as an input to this function. Okay, and then I need to go up and make sure I create that function. And for now, I'll just put some dummy code in there. And let's see, I saved it, and let's see if this runs. Another thing you can do is you can look here for any errors. I see a little red symbol here. VS Code will try to detect any syntax errors you have. So wherever that red is should be a syntax error. There, devs, for some reason, it doesn't like that. If I hover over it, it should tell me what the problem is. Assigning result of a function call where the function has no return. Okay. I guess I need to put a little bit more code in here. For now, I'm just going to return exactly what it was passed. So it won't be valid, but at least it'll return something. And you can see that error went away. Now it should run. So again, my passwords, my input, and then my list of devices is exactly the same as my input because I have no code to process it. Now I need to write that code in the getDevices function to do that. So in the end, I'm going to return something like a devices dictionary. So I'm just going to create that variable right now. And then I'm going to look over here because I need to gather up some information. I need to get things like the device type, which is here. It's the server's device type. I need to get the name of the device, so the device suffix and prefix. I need to get the suffix length because I need to know how to format it, and it's 2 digits long, so I'll need some code to do that. And that's the initial things because I need to give it a name in order to create a key for it in the devices dictionary. So I guess the first part of this code will be creating a set of names for the servers out of the information that tells me every server should start with the letters PC. Every server should have a suffix, a numerical suffix that's 2 digits long and starts with the number 9, and there should be 4 of them. So I should see, for example, in this case, PC9, PC10, 11, and then 12. So what device am I looking at right now? I'm looking at the server devices. So maybe that should be device type. And this should be in a loop. First things first, define that devices dictionary so we don't have an error there. Then for device type in, actually I'm going to call main dict dictionary. I think that's a little bit clearer. So the key I'm going to use is devices. I'm expecting to see devices here, and it's got a capital letter at the front, and that's not really consistent with anything else I did in this file. So instead of trying to make my code work for that, I'm just going to change the configuration file. You can see over here, Git is keeping track of the changes I make, and it's displaying that in VS Code's user interface. So it's, again, really good integration with Git in VS Code. So now I'm using the key I get as I iterate through each of the key value pairs in the devices dictionary. And so the key I got when I said for device type, the key I got was servers. So I should be now getting all the values for servers here. So the dictionary, the big dictionary under the key devices, and then in the next nested dictionary under the key that's pointed to by the device type variable. The next thing I want is the device prefix and suffix. Actually, I don't need the prefix right now. I need the device suffix so that I can do some processing on that. So I need to turn it into an integer because it's a string. It needed to be a string in the configuration file because it might start with a leading 0, for example, in order to pad out the number of digits and give you a clue for how long it is. And I need to calculate how long it is to tell me how many digits to use in my suffix. So the device suffix, I'm going to use the integer built-in function to convert it to an integer. And since I defined device as the dictionary that's underneath the device type here, so every device points to everything here in this dictionary here, So devices is the dictionary, and then the key is name suffix. And then the length of that. And I just use the length or len function to get the length of the string. And it's the same thing with the host name suffix. I need to create a variable that shows me what the host name prefix is going to be, and that could be an IP address, or it could be a host name if you've got a hosts file configured in this lab. And then the host name suffix is basically the numerical suffix. And again, if it's an IP address, it's going to be something like this. There, I've got some initial code created there to pull out those values. And for now, just for some test code, just to test if this is working, I'll create a list. And instead of the devices dictionary, I'll return that list. And then down here, yeah, it should just devs now as a list. Let's see how that runs. Okay, so that worked. I've got, again, my password test code here, my printing of the entire YAML file to convert it to a dictionary here, and then here is the initial variables that I'm setting. So for routers, I've got, when I'm iterating through the dictionaries, that device type is giving me a pointer to the entire dictionary. So I should take that out of the list. And also it's not printing it twice. So let me have a look here. Right, because the loop is inside the function. So I need the function to print that. And I don't need to print anything else out down there. And I'm not assigning it to anything. I'm actually running it, and then it's just going to print that file. It's going to print those lists out. And back up here, I'm going to get rid of the device type because I don't want the whole dictionary in there. I'm sorry, of the device. I think the device is the dictionary. We'll run it. And again, I'm not sure why I'm only getting one list. Let's see. Maybe it had something to do with the way I'm returning the list. Yeah. Okay. For some reason, because I had the return statement inside the for loop, that was causing a problem. Now I get both values, and I can see that I'm reading things properly. It's it's interpreting 09 as an integer, so it's printing out 9 without a leading 0. It's but it remembers, because I calculated the length of the integer, that I want that suffix to be 2 digits long. Same thing for the host name. The host name is 109 because that's been turned into an integer, but the length is going to be 3 in the end. I want to make a few quick fixes here. First, I shouldn't use list as a variable name. List is the name of a built-in function in Python. So I'll change that to something else. I'll just quickly retest that. Okay, that's working. And I'll just change where this label goes. Now I'll fill in the rest of the logic in the getDevices function. I won't need this test logic anymore. So for each device type, I need to create a unique device multiplied by the quantity of devices for that device type. For example, 4 routers or 4 servers. For something in the range, and we'll make sure we're reading that as an integer. And again, we're working with the device dictionary here, which is this set of key value pairs, and then this set of key value pairs. And we're nested inside this loop up here, which is going through each of those 2 sets of key value pairs, each of those 2 dictionaries. Each device in this devices dictionary needs a name, and I get that by going to the device prefix key value pair that's in the device type dictionary, and then getting the device suffix key value pair that's in the dictionary and adding them together. And the device suffix is an integer of a certain length, if necessary, padded by zeros. So how do I pad a string with zeros? This looks like my exact problem here. Stack Overflow to the rescue again. A string has a method called zfill, and I can use that to fill in zeros. So this is a string. I'm turning the device suffix into a string. The device suffix, for example, could be 9. And so I'm turning that into a string 9. And then I'm going to fill it with zeros up to the suffix length. And again, I got the device suffix length up here. And then I'm going to increment to the next device. And here's where I add something to the devices dictionary. And here I'm just adding all the key value pairs that are under parameters. And I'm going to just return the devices dictionary here. I haven't finished my devices dictionary, but I'm just going to test it at this point. And since I'm returning the dictionary, I will assign that function call to a variable, and then I will print that variable. Let's see, so it printed out a devices dictionary. I've got PC9, PC10, 11, 12, R1, 2, 3, 4. So seems to mostly be working right now. I still need to add more information to this dictionary. I need to fill in the hostname prefix in each of these devices. So here, for every device, I create the hostname prefix. I pull that out of the configuration file, and then I add the suffix for that particular device, and I make sure that it's a string. And again, I zfill it. I increment the host name suffix. I assign that host name into the dictionary that I've created in the host name field for that particular device. I will save that and run this again. And this time the host name has been filled in, and it's been filled in correctly for each device. So I have created a devices dictionary, and I can create a copy of this devices dictionary for each user that I create in the authentication file. So the next thing I need to do is create a dictionary of users, and I'll create a new function for that. We'll define a function called getUsers, and it takes as a parameter the dictionary that we created when we read in our configuration file. I want to have a look at what the dictionary we're going to create looks like. As I recall, what we created was a list, and each item in the list is a dictionary, and that dictionary represents one user. So my getUsers has to start with a list, and then append to the list these dictionaries that I build that have the student name, the student's password, and then a pointer to a copy of the devices dictionary, and I've already created the devices dictionary. I'll first define an empty list. So up here is my configuration file, from which I can infer what the dictionary is going to look like. And there's my users dictionary. So I'm going to iterate through that for each user type. So there's a trainer's user type, and then there's a student's user type. So for this particular configuration file, it'll go through that loop twice and pull out these values for each user type. And then using those values, generate usernames, passwords, and then put that all together into a dictionary with devices and append it to this user list. And this time I'm going to do something called tuple unpacking that I read about in the Learning Python book. And this is just a faster way to get the values part from the dictionary. So for user type, which is the key, every time it steps through the dictionary that it read from the YAML file. For user type and user values, that's the value that the user type pointed to. So I don't have to add an extra line of code to get that from the dictionary using the user type as a key. And in order to do that, you need to use the items method associated with the dictionary object. So when I apply the items method, it's going to give me a list of items, and each item is a key and a value. And then that maps to user type and user values as we go through this for loop. So the suffix comes from the dictionary of user values, and the key in there I need to look for is username suffix. And then the length of that suffix is just the exact same piece of data, but I run it through the length function. And then I have another nested loop here based on the information I can get from the dictionary that is pointed to by the key trainers in the users dictionary. I'm going to generate all the trainer users. And in this case, there's 2 of them, and that should turn into trainer 01 and trainer 02. I'm doing the exact same thing I did for devices. I'm using zfill. And then I increment the suffix. And I need to enter a password in for each user. And here I'm going to use that getUserPassword function that I previously created. And then I just build a new dictionary that's got the name I created, the password I created, and a copy of the devices dictionary that I previously created. And I'll use the dictionary function, and I can put all this on multiple lines, which makes it easier to read. And in order to make a copy of that dictionary, I just again use the dict function, which iterates through the reference to that dictionary and creates a new dictionary from it. And then I step out of that loop and I just append this dictionary that I've created, or this object that I've created, to the list, to the users list. And then I step out of the higher level for loop and then return the user list that has been generated by this nested for loop. I can see I have some errors according to the Python linter that comes with the Python extension for VS Code. I can look down here and I can see that I have 2 errors and 2 warnings. And if I click on that, what do I get? Yeah, it tells me where they are. Return outside function on line 51. Oh, right. I just need to put that underneath the actual function. So I fixed one problem, which made 2 other errors go away, but I still have this warning. Unused variable user type. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I don't have a use for it. I'm really interested in the user values that I'm pulling out here. Maybe what it's saying is that's not the clearest way to write this code in Python. Perhaps I should have just used the user type as a key and then added that extra line of code to pull out the user values. I'm going to ignore that for now and go down to the test code here. And I'll run this one more time. So here's my users dictionary. I have a username trainer2 and a username student10. So it's giving me the last user from each user type, but it's not giving me a full dictionary of all the users under each user type. But at least I can see here, it's giving me a username, a password, and then there's the copy of the devices dictionary, and it's got all the right values. All I need to do is fix this problem where it's only giving me the last user from each user type. Okay, I see what's wrong here. The user list where I'm appending the next user to the user list is not in the second nested loop, it's only in the first nested loop. So it's only going to append a list twice because the first loop only runs twice, and it's just going to be the last value in next user from the nested loop. All I need to do is push that one notch under there, and that should solve my problem. I'll save that and run it. There's a much bigger user dictionary now with 10 students and 2 trainers. There's student 1, and if I go all the way to the bottom, there's student 10. So I think that's good enough for now. I've got to a point where I've got a functional result, so I should commit my changes. I'm going to go to the source control section in VS Code, and I'm going to look at the files I want to commit. I want to commit the mapperdata.py file, and if you click on this, it shows you the git diff. You can see what code you added, deleted, changed, etc. And I'll click the plus button to stage that. That puts it up there with my staged changes. And I did make a minor change to the config.yaml file. I think I'll include that with this. It kind of goes together. And this examples.txt file, I don't care about, so I'll just delete that later. I'm going to enter in my git message here. And then I'm going to click the little check button here to commit those changes to Git. And then this example.txt file, I don't need that anymore, so I'll just go back to here, back to the terminal, and I'll just delete it. And since I've deleted it, Git doesn't care about it anymore. And now my version control looks nice and clean. And you can see here that VS Code from my Git configuration already knows about the remote Git repository that's hosted by GitHub. And with this little indication here, what it's saying is I have one commit that I could push up to GitHub. So I'll do that. I can just click on this little thing here, or I can always use the command palette, Control-Shift-P, and for example, just search for push and do a git push that way. Both do the same thing. I like to just click on this little thing here. There, it has pushed that up. All right, so this warning is bugging me, and I just want to try to fix that. So I'll just do this sort of in a more classic way. Instead of doing tuple unpacking in a for loop, I'll just go for user type in the dictionary pointed to the user's key in the main dictionary. And then user values will just be the value pointed to by that key in that dictionary. There, that's made the warning go away. Let's just run it and make sure that everything's still working. Yeah, and everything is still working. Again, I'll have to read up and see why I was getting that warning in the first place. The code worked both ways. I just wanted to satisfy VS Code here, so it's not always giving me a warning in this file. Now I want to build the XML file. And since the functions in this program are going to result in a dictionary that looks exactly like the dictionary that it used to generate when it was hard-coded, I should hopefully only have to do minor changes to the usermapping.py file. So I'll go to the usermapping.py file. Okay, so I don't need the user loader function anymore because it was the one that loaded up the host names, and that's already coming in the dictionary now. And from mapper data, I need to import get users and get devices. Actually, really, I just need to import get users. And here I'm going to, just take some of that code from here, from my test code here that actually read in the file. My structure variable now is going to come from the get users function. So I open the file, and stream is the file handler. Oh, I need to import YAML as well. And then from that YAML module, I do a safe load of the stream. So that converts it into this dictionary that we saw when we were working with mapper data. And then structure is the result of the get users function run with the dictionary that came from that configuration file. And then I run XML writer, which is in this file here, and that should generate the file. That'll put it in the usermapping.xml file. Okay, I'm going to save this, see if I get any warnings. No problems. I'm going to run it. And then I should have a usermapping.xml file that's been updated. That doesn't look like it's been changed. Delete that file. Now let's run usermapper. Again. Okay, so that created a usermapping.xml file. And there it is. Trainer 01 has PC 9, 10, 11. They look like they've got the right information. Router 1 through 8. Sorry, router 1 through 4. And then trainer 2, same thing, random password, and so on. And that goes all the way down to students, all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so this program is working properly now. I can already think of a few changes I should make to make it a little bit more robust and maintainable, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to check these changes into Git. Since I'm just going to check all of this into Git, I don't need to necessarily stage anything to separate out my commits. I'll just do it all with one commit message. Hang on a second. I'm not sure what I changed in mapperdata.py. Oh, right, that little change there that I made. Maybe I will separate this out because that was for a totally different reason. So I will stage that, and I will just say and then this one here, yes, I can see all those big changes I made. I deleted that and I added this code at the bottom to run. Yeah, 11 characters over 50 in current line. I'm not sure what that means. I guess I'm supposed to create a new line. That's something new to me, that there's a limit in the number of characters you should put in a git commit message. Something else for me to look up. And I'll commit that. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is upload those changes to GitHub. And now I'm going to merge this branch back to the main branch. So first things first, you go back to the master branch. Go git merge branch. I'm going to merge from the add config file branch. There, and that adds all these changes into the master branch. Now I'm in the master branch and all my changes are here. For example, mapperdata.py has the get users function and the get devices function. Here's a little indication here saying you need to publish the changes back to GitHub. So if I click on that, it should do that. So my changes have been published to GitHub. And if I go to the GitHub website, I should see that these changes are there. There, I can see these changes have been made just a few minutes ago in the master branch. I still have the add config file branch over there. I might delete that at some point. There, for example, you can see the latest version. As a matter of fact, just to clean things up, I should delete that branch. I think it's probably better to do everything in one place and then push your changes one way or the other. So I prefer to work locally rather than do things on the GitHub website. Go back here, go to the command palette, go to git delete branch. And the only branch that's available to delete is this one. So I click on that. And there, it's deleted the branch. And then I can click here to synchronize the changes up to GitHub. And for example, if I look here, I don't see that branch anymore. Still see it in the on the remote. I'll go back to GitHub, refresh the site, and I still have 2 branches. And I don't want to delete that there. So the way to delete a branch on the remote repository after you've deleted locally, as I recall when I was working with the git command line, is to do the git fetch command with the prune option. I wonder if that's possible in VS Code. There, git fetch prune. Now let's go back here and see that I still have 2 branches. I stopped for a second and did a bit of reading on this, and it looks like you just have to delete them individually. So for example, I can delete it up here on GitHub, or I could run the command, git push delete. Now I'll go back here and check this. Okay, so a few things you have to still do manually when you're working with VS Code. There is probably some way to do this, and I just don't know it yet. I've gone overtime today. What I've done is install VS Code, do some work in VS Code using Git to show how that is integrated with VS Code, and refactored my user mapper program so that it can read from a configuration file, and so I can generate more flexible authorization XML files for the Guacamole web proxy in the future. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.